Welcome back to OpenLine. Thank you for being with us tonight. We are talking with the folks from the Governor's Highway Safety Office. That's Kendall Poole and also Colonel Tracy Trott with the Tennessee Highway Patrol. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We are talking about the roads, keeping them safe, keeping people safe out on the roads. We've talked about that new seatbelt fine going up starting in January, so hopefully people will start to buckle up. One little thing I wanted to touch on that before we move on. I thought this was interesting, though not surprising. The person who is most likely not to buckle up is a male pickup driver or male passenger in a pickup.
In a rural area primarily. So if you want to break it down a little bit further, in our observational seatbelt survey that we're required to do, we break it down to all different vehicle types, and that helps us target our message a little bit more when you start talking about changing behavior, because that's what we're tasked with doing. And if you look at the studies, pickup truck drivers are 8 percentage points less likely than a normal vehicle driver to buckle up. And what's funny about pickup trucks, and Colonel Trott can speak from experience, they're much easier to roll over. And obviously ejection usually means death in a crash. And unfortunately, we see that happen almost on a daily basis. So with pickup trucks and more in rural areas, we're looking at young males ages 18 to 34 in pickup trucks that are the primary violators.
And those vehicles seem to be the vehicle of choice now for the younger generation, the high school and the young college students. They seem to prefer those type of vehicles, and we use the same figures and analysis that Kendall does to target our enforcement toward those target areas too.
So perhaps if you're a mom of one of those young men driving a truck, or a spouse or a girlfriend, nag a little bit on your loved one there and say, hey, it's time to start buckling up.
Well, and you think about Colonel Trott has had to do this, and all of his men and all of our law enforcement partners across the state. They have to go knock on somebody's door and tell them that they've had a loved one pass away, and he can probably tell you that's his least favorite thing that he's ever had to do.
Those are pretty emotional experiences, and you can talk to any of the troopers that have done one, and it sticks with them for quite a while.
I would imagine so. I'd imagine so. Let's talk about holiday travel now. Different challenge going on out there, the I-40 challenge. What's that about?
Well, the I-40 challenge was an idea I had about 3 years ago that we do a lot of data-driven analysis on traffic and fatality numbers and enforcement. And we noticed and saw through our analysis that on Wednesday before Thanksgiving and the Sunday after Thanksgiving were peak travel times for people going to their destinations and coming home. And that was the most dangerous times for serious crashes or fatality accidents. We thought that if we could organize a nationwide effort using I-40 as the primary road to work in the primary enforcement or crash time of day, we could have an effect on safety across the nation. I enlisted the help of all the colonels of the states that reach across the United States. There's 7 other states, including Tennessee, and yeah, it was easily done with the colonels and the association that I have with them. And we each committed that we would station a trooper every 20 miles across 2,500 miles of I-40 for the 12 hours on Wednesday from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. and 12 hours on Sunday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. In 3 years, those 24 hours of operation for 3 Thanksgiving weekends, we have had 2 fatality accidents during those hours of operation. And that was a single crash that happened in Arizona this year that killed 2 people. Other than that, we have not had anyone killed during the I-40 challenge during the 3-year period during those hours of operation. So I think it proves to us that saturated enforcement and a high visibility presence works, makes people drive safely, and it has a positive effect on safety.
Yeah, when you see those patrol cars every 20 miles, you are minding your P's and Q's out there. You are alert. So congratulations on the big impact you're having there. I asked you during the break, and so I guess I'm not the only one with this question. Who is in charge of those highway billboard signs? Because there are some pretty clever ones. And they're memorable. That's the point of it.
They are memorable, and there's a reason for that. Those are what we call the DMS signage, and dynamic message signaging boards. Years and years ago, they were purchased with Federal Highway Administration funds, which TDOT gets their money from, and of course Commissioner John Schroer is the brainchild behind those. When I came in 10 years ago, we weren't utilizing them for any behavioral messages like click it or ticket, and And slowly but surely we were able to change how we looked at that. We were competing for federal dollars with other states who did utilize their boards for messaging. And so we wanted to put ourselves on that same even playing field. And so slowly but surely we started to utilize them more. And when Commissioner Schroer became the commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Transportation 5 years ago, he said, why aren't we using them more? And then we started to use them not only during mobilization and campaign periods, but all throughout the year, and posting the daily fatality numbers where people could actually see what was going on. Much like you can sit in Times Square and see the national debt creep up, and this was kind of the same deal. But as far as the messages go, we've got a little committee within the Tennessee Department of Transportation. Some have come from other states, but they're designed to capture attention. And so whether it's a hardcore enforcement message or whether it's something funny that may be able to catch your attention, we do want it to be memorable, and we think we are changing behavior that way.
Colonel, even you have a favorite.
Yeah, I like the one that says, get your head out of your apps.
Which is so poignant.
I read that one day, and it just made me think of Commissioner Schroer and his sense of humor, and I just really appreciated it. I can say one thing about the message boards. That when we were doing fatality numbers up on the boards every day, we saw a reduction in our fatality numbers.
Wow.
And then at some point in time, we took them down, and we were doing some other things with them, some other messaging and everything, and numbers slowly creeped back up. And at the end of that first year, I asked Commissioner Schroer to put them back up for the month of December, and we saw fatalities go down again. So there has seemed to be, a very positive reaction from people seeing the fatality numbers on a regular basis. I don't think a lot of Tennesseans understand how many people actually die on our roadways.
Yeah, I think this year we're already up to 800.
We're close to 9. We're closing in on 900.
890 as of
last
today.
year. Yeah.
And let's talk about the effects of education and the messaging and the enforcement and everything, the engineering, the 3 E's, education, enforcement, and engineering. 10 years ago, we were averaging right at 1,300 fatalities per year in the state. And just a decade later, we're now averaging well under 1,000. And that's still 1,000 too many.
Right.
But the good news behind that is we're a third less than we were 10 years ago. And in fact, if the numbers hold up, and December hasn't been too kind to us so far, but if the numbers hold up, we still feel like we're going to have our lowest fatality number in the state of Tennessee since 1962.
Wow.
So
that's encouraging.
So we're pretty proud of that. Now again, that's still 890 fatalities too many, and we talk about drive to zero and zero fatalities, and while that may be wishful thinking, that's our goal every day. Neither one of us like to come into our office and see that daily fatality report every day, but with 95 counties and the hundreds of miles that we have across the state of Tennessee, it's inevitable that there are going to be some that don't get the message.
Absolutely.
We did a little historical analysis on the fatality numbers going back into the 60s. In 1964, Tennessee went over 1,000 fatalities for the first time in its history. They stayed over 1,000 for 44 straight years. And then they had 1 year under, and then they went back up to over 1,000. So for the 46 years preceding the Haslam administration, Tennessee averaged 1,257 fatalities a year. The 4 years of the Haslam administration going on to the 5th, they've averaged 975. 250 some odd people, lives saved every year during this administration under the leadership of Commissioner Gibbons in the Department of Safety.
That's fantastic.
And we're proud of that, but we're not ready to retire on that number and just say that's the best we can do, because we think we can do even better. And we're working on programs and operations and law changes and all the things that Kendall does in the education and engineering part that are going to make a difference. This year, like Kendall said, we could end up with the lowest year since 1962, probably somewhere around 920, 25, somewhere in that region is what we're projecting. We hope it stays that way. Like Kendall said, the first half of December has not really been too kind to us yet, but we're working hard to finish the year strong.
And speaking of finishing the year and looking ahead to what is happening in the future, let's talk about cell phones. I think we did a story last week maybe about a state lawmaker proposing a change in legislation to go hands-free with cell phones. Not to say no cell phones behind the wheel, but to go hands-free. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something you would like to see?
I have chaired our national association for the last 3 years and just stepped down in September, the Governor's Highway Safety Association. That's all my counterparts in all 50 states and in 6 territories. And we support, as an organization, a handheld ban, and we've seen the difference that it makes in other states. A decrease in distracted driving, a decrease in distracted driving fatalities. So we're going to support anything that's going to make our roads safer. I think politically it's a little bit different challenge within our legislature. I don't know that Tennessee is ready to accept that yet, but I think we're going to see. It's going to be interesting to see the conversations that go on at the General Assembly this year.
And we're going to, as an organization, we're going to support the governor's position on these legislative matters and work to keep as many people safe as we can. Obviously, distracted driving is a very serious subject. We think the numbers are much higher than what's articulated, because nobody walks up to you at a crash scene and says, "It was my fault, I was talking on a cell phone." They just don't do that. So we think that we can attribute about 20% of the serious fatality crashes to distraction, some sort of distraction, but in reality we think that number is probably closer to 50 or 60%.
Wow.
And we just can't articulate it or prove it. And you know, distracted driving is really one of our top priorities. You know, we start down the line with impaired driving, seatbelt enforcement, hazardous movement violations, and distracted driving is right there in the top 4. And those are the things we work on very hard every day. And we know if we do a good job in those areas, we will reduce fatalities.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to continue to talk about this distracted driving. It's such a hot topic right now, so stay with us. Again, if you have a question, I know we got to talking and we lost some of you on the phone lines. Go ahead, give us a call back. We will get to your phone calls, I promise. Stay with us.